Hello everyone, welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We're holding a Mishnah Berurah Chelik Aleph, and we'll be learning today, Mirza Hashem, Daf Chav Tes Amid Beis. We are continuing to learn Hilchos Tzitzis. We pick up today on Chav Tes Amid Aleph with the final sif of Siman Yud Zayin, Sif Gimel, end of the line, 2 lines off the bottom of the Shulchan Aruch. Chav Tes Amid Aleph says the Mechaber Sif Gimel. Katan hayodeya lihis atef. A katan, a minor child, who knows how to wrap himself in tzitzis. Aviv tzarech likach lo tzitzis lechanchai. His father is required to purchase tzitzis for him in order to train him in kiyum hamitzvos. This, I believe, is based on the Gemara in Sukkah. Yes, the Berurah brings it down as katan daled. Sukkah Mem Beis Amud Aleph, the Gemara over there, talks about the chiyuv of chinuch on various mitzvahs. One of the mitzvahs that the Gemara mentions is the mitzvah of tzitzis. And the Gemara says if a katan knows how to wrap himself properly in tzitzis, at that point already, the father is chayiv to be mechanech him in mitzvahs, as far as in the mitzvah of tzitzis. As far as what that precise age is practically, we will discuss that shortly. But first, let's take a look here at the Mishnah Berurah Ois Katan Tes. Says the Mishnah Berurah, likach loy tzitzis. The father is required to purchase tzitzis. Now, what exactly is it that the father is mechuyev to purchase? Says the Mishnah Berurah, Pirush, the explanation of this is, likach loy beged shal arba kanfos. The father has to purchase a 4-cornered beged for him, or lahatel by tzitzis, and place tzitzis on it, kedei lechanchai b'mitzvahs, in order to train him in the proper kiyum mitzvahs. Now, what's interesting about this is, let's realize, me'ikar hadin, even an adult, has no obligation to purchase a beged of daled kanfos and then put tzitzits on it and wear it. The me'ikar hadin, the mitzvah say darais of tzitzits is, if you have a 4-cornered garment and you intend on wearing that 4-cornered garment, then you need to attach tzitzis to it when you wear it. If you don't have a 4-cornered garment and you have no intent on wearing a 4-cornered garment, you're not mechuyev to. It's not like we said yesterday, it's not a chiyuv gavra. It's not like the mitzvah of tefillin, where you're mechuyev to go get tefillin and put on tefillin. It's not like lulav and esrig, where you are mechuyev to get a lulav and esrig and daled minim, and you're mechuyev to be mekayim the mitzvah of daled minim. No, by tzitzits, if you're going to wear a beged of daled kanfos, you have to put tzitzits on that beged. Now, we've mentioned already many times, nowadays, Klal Yisrael was makabel on themselves. We don't walk daled amos without tzitzits. So we do a chumrah. We go ahead and we intentionally put on a beged of daled kanfos in order to be mechayev ourselves in the midst of tzitzits. But me'ikar adin, there is no such chiyuv. Yet, the Mechaber over here at Siv Gimel says, if you have a young child who is already of age where he knows how to put on tzitzits, your mechuyev, says the Mechaber, aviv tzarech likach loy tzitzits. He has to buy him tzitzits. And says the Mishnah Berurah, what that means is, you have to buy him a beged of daled kanfos, put tzitzits on him, and give it to him to wear. Why? Why is there such a chiyuv of chinuch? I would think that the chiyuv of chinuch is, yes, if he's going to wear a beged of daled kanfos, you have to make sure that he puts tzitzits on it. But why are you mechuyev, something that even an adult is not strictly speaking chayiv in, why are you mechuyev to buy him a beged of daled kanfos so that he should have a chiyuv? And the answer is, says the Mishnah Berurah, kidei lechanchai b'mitzvahs. We have to understand what the concept of chinuch is. The concept of chinuch is not only to teach a child the details of the mitzvah mitzvah of chinuch is to be mechanech him to live the way a Torah Yid lives, to live the way an Erlich from a Yid lives. Part of our living is we wear tzitzits every day. That's what we do. We wear tzitzits every day, whether the style is to wear 4-cornered garments or not. We have a talis katan, and by davening we wear a talis gadol. So that's the way we have to be mechanech our children. We have to be mechanech our children to wear tzitzits as well. Continues the Mishnah Berurah here in Ice Cotton Test. V'shir talisai. What is the proper measurement for the talis katan of a child? Kasav b'prima gadim writes b'sibit tezayin u'b'darech achayim shehu kidei lehisatef by roishay v'rubai shaloi. Let's remember, what did we say is the minimum shear of an adult's talis katan? We said it has to be the size that a young child, we said a child of approximately 9 years old, can cover roishay v'rubai with that beged. So the minimum size of a beged for a chiyuv tzitzis for an adult does not depend on the size of the adult. It depends on the size of a 9-year-old child. But by a child, it's not that way. By a child, the minimum shear for a child's beged of tzitzis, talis katan, is his personal roishay v'rubai. So it depends on that child's unique size. Says the Mishnah Berurah, u'misha'arinan b'katan atzmai. We go by the individual katan, shemisatef by, who's actually going to wear that tzitzis. Lefi gadlai, according to his size, according to his lefi gadlai, according to his larger size, or lefi katnai, or according to his smaller size. V'im yesh by zeh hashir, and if the child does have a beged that meets that requirement, if you purchase for a child a beged that can cover his roishay v'rubai, as in that case, tzarich aviv lahata by tzitzis, his father has to properly affix tzitzis to that beged, ulevarech imai, and to make a bracha with him on those tzitzis. V'im ein by zeh hashir, but if it does not have that shear, ein mavarchen alav, then it's the opinion of the Mishnah Berurah that you do not make a bracha, you wouldn't have a katan make a bracha on a beged that is smaller than that shear. Now, that is that's the shita of the Mishnah Berurah. I know they bring down here in the Dirshu, in footnote number 8, Kasar b'shal z'tshuva shevet halevi, Rav Vosner Zatzal, she'yechelim lahargila levarach k'dei lechabe v'lavas hamitzvahs, af im ein b'talis katan k'dei shear roishay v'rubai. V'agayin Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach Zatzal kasav, she'agam she'as l'chanech b'davar apostle l'mitzvasai, gam es misha lo yigia l'chinech v'kamaka b'tzitzis she'mitzvah chashuva ma'oid, u'mitzvasa kal yoyim, v'gam ketanim she'b'nei shalosh v'arba shanim adayin lo yigia l'chinech, akein ein ligar b'mechancham l'sam levarech. So the consensus of the latter-day poskim seems to be that by a katan, even if the beged, even if the talis katan that they have does not meet this minimum shear, it's not large enough to cover roishay v'rubai of that katan, you could still be mechanechim to make a bracha. Says the Mishnah Berurah, there is katan yod l'chanchai, kol zeh dafka k'shaloi yigi adayin l'shloish esrei. When we're speaking about a child here, we're speaking about somebody who has not yet reached 13 years of age. Aval b'shloish esrei ve'elech. But once a child reaches the age of 13, chayiv b'tzitzis kegadol. At that point, he's chayiv b'tzitzis just as an adult. Now, I would bring your attention back on Chav Tes Amud Aleph to Sharei Tshuva Ois Katan Gimel. So first, the Sharei Tshuva says Ein Ber Hetiv. Then says the Sharei Tshuva. The Kasav be'Eliyah Rabbah, the Eliyah Rabbah writes, B'Shem Sifrei Yereim, Lahalbish Lakatan Talis Katan, that you should start putting a Talis Katan on a minor, Kishaydei Aladaber, once he knows how to talk, Ulapachus, and at least Mechuyev Lahalbishai, you're Mechuyev to put a Talis Katan on him, Kishayagia Leben Shalosh Shanim, when he reaches 3, the age of 3. The Siman, and we have an interesting remez to this in the Torah from the pasuk Ki ha'adam eitz hasadeh. The pasuk in Devarim draws a comparison between a person and a tree. Ki ha'adam eitz hasadeh, says the Sharei Tshuva. K'may la'etz hu shalosh shanim arla. What do we find by a fruit tree? The first 3 years of a fruit tree's existence, you're not allowed to use that fruit. That fruit has a din of arla. So the first 3 years of a child, it's like Orla. The child is not ready for use yet. But after the age of 3, already we have to be mechanechim. We put on tzitzis. And that's when we also teach them Aleph Beis, Torah Tziva Lanu Moshe, Shema Yisrael, etc., etc., Ayin Sham. So the takeaway over here so far is there is a chiyuv of chinuch on a katan when it comes to the mitzvah of tzitzis. That chiyuv of chinuch is not only if he wears a beged of dalet kanfos, it has to have tzitzis. No, the chiyuv of chinuch is to buy him a beged of talis katan, buy him a beged of dalet kanfos, buy him a talis katan, and see to it that he wears it. And you should make a bracha with him. What's the proper size for a child's talis katan? His personal roishai v'rubai. How do you measure the roishai v'rubai of a child? So what I saw brought down is that you measure the child's back and the child's head, and the majority of that measurement, that's the length of the tzitzits. And then as far as the width of the tzitzits, it has to be enough to wrap around the majority of his body. So you figure if you could wrap around, let's say, his full back and his sides, or his full front and his sides, that is roiv. So that's how you would measure the roishay v'rubai for the size of the talis katan of a katan. Now let's finish off the Mishnah Berurah here on Chavtes Amud Beis. Umashakasa b'drashos maharil. This is a little bit puzzling, exactly what the Mishnah Berurah is saying here. The Mishnah Berurah brings down a maharil. Umashakasa b'drashos maharil b'hilchos nesuin. Shenoyagin shagam na'orim gedolim. Even older men, na'orim gedolim, let's say teenagers, ein misatven b'tzitzits, they don't wear tzitzits, ad shenoisid lahem noshim, until they get married. V'samchu lahen akra, and they base this on a pasuk, d'ksiv gedilim taselach. Torah Dosha speaks about tzitzits and says gedilim taselach, you should make tzitzits fringes for you. V'samuch le, and the Torah writes next to that, ki yikach ish isha, the pasuk that refers to a man marrying a woman. And based on that, the Maharil says, you see that tzitzits is when you get married. Says the Mishnah Berurah, davar tomua. This is astonishing. Is there even a possibility to say that somebody is not chayiv in tzitzits somehow until he gets married? And until then, he should be mavatal the mitzvah of tzitzis? Can't be. Now, there are those that say that this Maharil doesn't mean that you're not chayiv in tzitzis at all until you get married. What he was referring to is the wearing of a talis gadol, which is the meaning that many of us have, that somebody doesn't wear a talis gadol until he gets married. And this is why, gedilim tasalach ki yikach ish isha. The Mishnah Berurah didn't seem to learn the Maharil that way, so the Mishnah Berurah was astonished by this Maharil that seems to suggest that there's no mitzvah of tzitzis until you get married. Now, we finished the Mishnah Berurah over here, but we still have our Ramah. So let's turn back to Chavtes Amud Aleph. Bottom line in the Shulchan Aruch, the words of the Ramah, Hagah. So the Mechaber told us that there's a chiyuv of chinuch for a katan in the mitzvah of tzitzits when he's a katan hayodei al his atef. Wonder if I have a sukkah gemara here. Let me see. Yes, I do. Just want to take a look at the lashon of the gemara in Sukkah, Mem Beis Amud Aleph. The Gemara brings down a brisa. Tana Rabbanan, we learned in a brisa. Katan ha'yedei l'naneya, a katan, a minor child who knows how to shake a lulav. Chayiv belulav, there's a chayiv of lulav to be mechanechim in the mitzvah of dalaminim. Lehisatef, if he knows how to be misatef batzitzits, there's a Rashi there, no. If he knows how to be misatef batzitzits, then chayiv b'tzitzis, that he has an obligation of tzitzits. That's the lashon of the brisa, and that's what this halachah is based on. So that's what the Mechaber said. The Mechaber said, katan yedei lehisatef. If he knows how to wrap himself in a talis, in tzitzits, that's when he has a chiyuv of chinuch. We see in the Shari Tshuva, it already begins at the age of 3. However, says the Ramah, Hagah, V'dafka kishayedei la'atoif shtei tzitzis lefanav ushtayim la'achrav. The Ramah says that when the Mechaber says that the katan has to be a yedei lehisatef, it means lehisatef properly. It means that he understands that when you wear tzitzits, you have to have two of the tzitzits corners in the front, two of the tzitzits corners in the back, which we have learned earlier, by the way, that by the Ramah, that was a very significant requirement. And that's why the Ramah said in the Darkei Moshe in the Torah that there are certain garments, since the way they are worn is that all four corners are in the front, they have no chiyuv tzitzits, because the chiyuv of tzitzits is when you have two in the front and two in the back. Okay, continues the Ramah here, top line, Chavtes Amid Beis. There's another very interesting requirement that a katan has to have in order to be chayiv in tzitzits. What's that? V'yodea lechais hatzitzits b'yodai b'shas kriyashma. He also has to be old enough to understand the obligation to hold the tzitzits when saying kriyashma. Very interesting. Now that's something that we will discuss in greater detail when we learn Hilchos kriyashma. But interesting. Who would think that that's a requirement for a katan to be chayiv in tzitzits, that he has to be cognizant of the need to hold the tzitzis by kriyashma? Very interesting. Okay, now we move on to Siman Yudches, Zman tzitzis, the proper time for the fulfillment of the mitzvah of tzitzis, and the time for the obligation of the mitzvah of tzitzis. Ubay Gimel Seifim, and here we have 3 Seifim. Says the Mechaber Sif Aleph. Laila lav zman tzitzitzu. Night is not a time of an obligation of tzitzits. Why? The imit mi ureisa maisai. We learned about this yesterday. The pasuk says ureisa maisai. So clearly there is a requirement. There's a factor in tzitzits that the tzitzits need to be visible. Ureisa maisai. We said you might think that comes to exclude a blind person. Maybe a blind person is pater in tzitzis. We said no. We learned out that a blind person is chayiv in tzitzis from the pasuk of Asher Techasebay. But from a Re'isa Maisai, what we do learn is that night is not a time for tzitzits. Why? Because at night you can't see tzitzits. We think night is like day. That's one of the reasons why sometimes I think our health is in danger, because we have no day, we have no night, because we have artificial light. But strictly speaking, night is not a time when tzitzits is going to be visible. And therefore, night is not a time for tzitzits. There's no obligation of tzitzits at night. Now, the question is, what exactly does that mean? And here we have a very famous machlokes rishonim. Says the Mechaber, Leha Rambam, according to the Shitas HaRambam, what does this mean, that Laila is not as man tzitzits? Very simple. Kol ma sheloivesh balayla, whatever you wear at night, potter is potter at tzitzits. There's no obligation of tzitzits at night. So, does it matter what you wear? No. No four-cornered garment has a chiyuv of tzitzits at night, because Laila loves man tzitzits. So, Laharambam, kol ma sheloivesh balayla, whatever you wear at night, potter is exempt from tzitzits, afilu hu miyuchad layoim, even if that beged is really a daytime beged. Doesn't matter. It's still potter at tzitzits, because Laila is not as man tzitzits. Uma sheloivesh bayoim, and whatever you wear during the day, chayiv is obligated in tzitzits if it's a beged of dalad kanfais, afilu miyuchad laila, even if it's a beged laila. So the Rambam learns very, very simple. What does it mean that laila is not as man tzitzits? It means there is no chiyuv of tzitzits at night. Doesn't matter what kind of beged you're wearing. No. You're wearing a daytime beged, and it has dalad kanfais. You're wearing it at night, it's potter. You wear pajamas during the day. I don't care if it's pajamas. If it has four corners and you're wearing it during the day, it's chayiv. If you wear it at night, it's potter. That's the sheet of the Rambam. Seems to be very, very simple. Ula Harash, but according to the Rush, it's not that way. Ula Harash, you know what this means? That Laila is not as man tzitzits? Ksus habeyuchad la Laila, a beged Laila, a beged that is intended to be worn at night. Pajamas, a beged Laila, potter, is exempt from tzitzits, afilu live shaybayim. Even if you happen to put on pajamas by day, it doesn't matter. According to the Rush, Laila loves man tzitzits, A beged laila is not as man tzitzis. Uksus hamayuchad liyoim, but if you have a garment that's a daytime garment, oy liyoim vilaila, or it's a garment that's not specific for day or night, chayiv afilu lo yishav. That beged is chayiv in tzitzis even if you wear it at night. So here we have this very famous machlokes, the Rambam and the Rosh, that we should fix in our minds for a proper understanding of the Mishnah Berurah. According to the Rambam, it's very simple. Laila lavs man tzitzis. Nighttime, there's no chiyuv of tzitzis. Doesn't matter what you're wearing. Doesn't matter what you're wearing. There's just no chiyuv of tzitzis. By night, you're wearing a shirt, a daytime shirt that has 4 corners. You're wearing it at night. Potter. Laila lavs man tzitzis. You wear pajamas during the day, and they have 4 corners. Is it chayiv in tzitzis according to the Rambam? Yes. Why? Because during the day, any beged of daled kanfes is chayiv in tzitzis. Doesn't matter if it's a nighttime beged. I don't care. It's day now. If it's day and you're wearing a beged of daled kanfes, you're chayiv in tzitzis. At night, you're potter from tzitzis. That's the Rambam. According to the Rosh, it's not that night there's no chiyuv of tzitzis. It's a question of the beged. A beged of night. A beged that's biyuchad l'layla. Pajamas are potter in tzitzis. Because it's a nighttime beged. If it's a daytime beged, a shirt that has daled kanfes, you wear it at night, you're chayiv. You wear pajamas during the day, according to the Rosh, potter in tzitzis. Why? Because it's a nighttime beged. And a nighttime beged is not chayiv in tzitzis. This is the machlokes, the Rambam and the Rosh. Says the Ramah, end of the line, 3 lines in, Haga usafik brachas lahakal. We have the great rule that when we have a suffix, whether or not there's a chiyuv of a mitzvah, we don't make a bracha. Why? Because a bracha is a d'Rabbanan, suffix d'Rabbanan lahakal, and also we don't want to risk making a bracha if there's no true chiyuv for the bracha, because that would chas v'chalila constitute making a bracha of HaTorah, la'yisis Hashem hashav. We don't take a risk on that. So the Ramah says, suffix brachas lahakal. Al kain, therefore, ein levarich. You should not make a bracha on tzitzits. Ein levarich alav. Ela kishalovish b'yoim. You should only make a bracha on tzitzits during the day. Because according to the Rambam, at night, there's never a chiyuv of tzitzits. So don't make a bracha on tzitzits at night. Because, like the Rambam, it could be a bracha of HaTorah. And not only that, v'hu miyuchad gam kein layoim. And the bracha that you make, the garment that you make the bracha on, should be a beged yoim, not a beged laila. Because if it's a beged laila, then according to the Rosh, it's potter even during the day. So we want to make sure that when you make a bracha on tzitzits, you have a clear chiyuv, both according to the Rambam, so it's got to be during the day, and according to the Rosh, it's got to be a beged yoim. That's when you make a bracha. Let's stop here for a moment, and let's take a look at the Mishnah Berurah. Says the Mishnah Berurah is katan aleph, lahar Rambam. Umikol makayim, nevertheless, so very interesting point that the Chavetz Chaim discusses here. According to the Rambam, nighttime is never a chiyuv of tzitzits. Now let's remember a halachah that we learned earlier in Siman Yud Gimel. Siman Yud Gimel. Siman Yud Gimel Sef Aleph, Chav Daled Amud Beis. The Mechaber said, Arba tzitziyos ma'akvin zeh. In order for a talis katan or a talis gadol to be kosher, you have to have kosher tzitzis on all 4 corners. If one corner is puzzle, the whole beged is puzzle. Shekol zman she'ein ba kol ha'arba eina mitziyetzes ka'halacha. So now, says the Mechaber, v'hayotzei bo l'rishus harabim b'Shabbos. If you go out to the rishus harabim on Shabbos with a beged, with a talis katan or a talis gadol, on which the tzitzits are not kosher, chayiv chatos. You're over haitzah daraisa. So you go out to the Rishus HaRabim on Shabbos with no erev, and you're wearing a talis gadol, and it's got tzitzits on all 4 corners, but on one corner the tzitzits are puzzle. Guess what? You're being over haitzah on all the rest of the tzitzit strings, because we learned they're not considered bottled to the beged, because they're not doing anything for the beged. They're not kosher. So they're not bottled to the beged. And they're also not bottled entirely because they're still tzitzis. You have kosher and tzitzis strings there as well, and the kosher and tzitzis strings are not bottled because you're not intending on removing them. So now you're chayav haitzah on the tzitzis strings. So what do we see from that halacha? We see that there is a possibility of being over haitzah with tzitzis strings that are attached to a beged. When they're not effective, when they're puzzle. So it brings up the Chavetz Chaim over here, wait a second. According to the Rambam, Laila is not as man tzitzis. So let's say, Erev Shabbos, you're dressed, and certainly you're wearing a talis katan, you're wearing tzitzis, you go to shul while it's still day. Now you're coming home from shul after Ma'ariv, it's night. Night is not as man tzitzis. If night is not as man tzitzis, then what are those tzitzis strings that are hanging on your talis katan? They're not being effective because the beged doesn't need them. There's no chiyuv of tzitzis now. So they're not being effective, so maybe now they're a masui. Maybe now they're no longer bottled to the beged. Maybe now they become a masui, the same way puzzle and tzitzis. When your tzitzis are puzzle, you have certain strings that become a masui. Maybe now you're being over on hoitzah. So maybe according to the Rambam, you're not allowed to wear tzitzis outside at night on Shabbos, Friday night. That's the question that the Chavetz Chaim addresses here. Let's see what the Chavetz Chaim says. When we come Mocha, nevertheless, even according to the Rambam, Mutter Lotzeis l'Rishus Harabim, you're allowed to go out to the Rishus Harabim, Palel Shabbos, Friday night, Bat Talis, wearing a talis or a talis katan, Imat tzitzis, with tzitzis attached to it, V'loi heavy masoi, and the tzitzis strings are not a masoi. You're not over on hitzah. Why? Shehem noya beged, because the tzitzis are bottled to the beged, because they're considered a noi, they're considered decorative, they're ancillary to the beged, they're bottled to the beged, v'tachshi teha, and it's considered a takshit, it's considered an adornment to the beged. Now this Mishnah Berurah is very interesting, because the Mishnah Berurah does not draw a difference. He doesn't explain to us what the difference is between this halacha here and the halacha in Siman Yud Gimel. Again, in Siman Yud Gimel we say, you go outside on Friday night wearing a talis, and on one corner of the talis the tzitzis are puzzle. You're being over haitzah daraisa. Why? Because on the other three corners the tzitzis are kosher. And those kosher tzitzis on the other three corners are not considered a noi la beged. They're not considered bottled to the beged. Why not? Because they're not being effective. Why are they not being effective? Because the tzitzits on this garment as a whole are puzzle. Because on one corner you don't have kosher tzitzits. So are these tzitzits doing anything? No, they're not. So then they're not annoyed to the beged. They're not considered ancillary to the beged, and they're considered a masui. That's what we learned in Yud Gimel. Over here, it's Friday night. These tzitzits that are hanging on the beged, are they being effective? Are they doing anything? No, they're not. Excuse me. Are they being effective? No, they're not being effective. Why are they not being effective? Because there's no chiyuv of tzitzits now. So why aren't they a masui? So the Mishnah Berurah says the halacha, but he doesn't draw a distinction. I think the distinction is a very simple distinction. I think the distinction is that in Siman Yud Gimel, the tzitzis are puzzle. They are inherently puzzle. Even if you're wearing them during a time that's zman tzitzits, they still would not be effective. So they're not tzitzits. And therefore they cannot be considered a noi for the beged. But over here in our halacha, even according to the Rambam, if you go out with these tzitzis Friday night, it's true that right now the tzitzis aren't doing anything, because now it's not a chiyuv of tzitzis. But it's not that the tzitzits are puzzle. It's not that the tzitzits are no longer considered tzitzits. They are tzitzits, and they're perfectly kosher tzitzits. And the beged needs them for tomorrow. Right now, there's no chiyuv. But that's not a problem that's inherent to the tzitzits and the beged. Therefore, even Friday night, the tzitzis are considered a noi for the beged, because you want them on the beged. Because tomorrow morning there's going to be a chiyuv. So they still are considered a noi to the beged. in Siman Yud Gimel, they're inherently puzzle, so they cannot be considered a noi for the beged. That's how I understand the distinction. Ice Cut and Bays, the Ramah said that we see this machlokes, the Rambam and the Rosh, and we know that when it comes to a bracha, safek brachas lahakal. Therefore, we're not going to make a bracha unless we know that there's a chiyuv, both according to the Rambam and the Rosh. Lahakal, says the Mishnah Berurah, hainu dafka inyan bracha. This kula is only a kula in the bracha. It's only by the bracha that we're going to say you don't make a bracha unless there's a chiyuv, both according to the Rambam and the Rosh. Aval, however, don't think that we can now extend this to the chiyuv of tzitzis, and you'll say, oh, we only make a bracha if there's a chiyuv according to the Rambam and according to the Rosh. Maybe we only put tzitzis on the beged if there's only a chiyuv according to the Rambam and according to the Rosh. Says the Chavetz Chaim, no, by the bracha, we only make a bracha if there's a chiyuv according to the Rambam and the Rosh, but that's because we don't want to chas v'chalila come to a bracha of HaTorah. But when it comes to the chiyuv of having tzitzis on the beged, that we go l'chumrah. Aval, says the Mishnah Berurah, also lilbosh ksus shalayla, you're not allowed to wear a nighttime beged bayoim below tzitzis. If you had a four-cornered pair of pajamas, you're not allowed to wear them during the day without tzitzis, even though, according to the Rosh, pajamas during the day would be potter because it's a beged laila. Doesn't matter. We're going to be choshish for the Rambam. According to the Rambam, any four-cornered beged you wear during the day is chayiv and tzitzis. So we're going to be machmir. When it comes to having tzitzis on the beged, we're going to be machmir like the Rambam. V'chein, and the flip, the opposite is also true. V'chein ksus shel yoim balayla, if you wear a daytime beged at night, we're not going to say, oh, you don't have to put tzitzis on it because of the Rambam. It's night. No. According to the Rosh, since it's a beged yoim, it's chayiv and tzitzis. So it's chayiv and tzitzis. Mishum safek. So because of the safek, we're machmer like the Rambam and the Rosh. Nevertheless, says the Chavetz Chaim, there it seems to me, the hashatz halovesh talis. If you have a shliach tzibur, a chazan, who's wearing a talis, now, a talis is a beged yoim. So let's say you have a shliach tzibur that's wearing a talis by Ma'ariv. Many places, the chazan wears a talis by Ma'ariv. So he's wearing a beged yoim by night. According to the Rosh, there's a chiyuv of tzitzis. Says the Mishnah Berurah, "B'kamakav nira da'ashatze levish talis balayla ein tzarich livdoi katzitzis." He doesn't have to check the tzitzis. Now, zichi, he's not going to make a bracha. That's the Ramah. The Ramah said you don't make a bracha on a beged yoim at night because we're worried about the Rambam. Might be a bracha of Atala. But there's a different question, points out the Chavetz Chaim. The chazan from Ma'ariv is going to put on a talis. According to the Rosh, even though it's night, that talis is chayiv and tzitzis. So you're not going to make a bracha because we're worried. Bracha levatala, according to the Rambam, you're not going to make a bracha. But do you have to be baidik to tzitzis? Says the Mishnah Berurah, no. You don't have to be baidik to tzitzis. Ain't tzarich livdak tzitzis. The bekigoyin zeh, because it's such a case, bevadai nucha lismoich al cheskasan shemikvar. In this case, you could rely on the chazaka that the talis is kosher, and you don't have to go check it. And the truth is, this is in line with what we learned earlier in the Mishnah Berurah. We learned earlier in the Mishnah Berurah, the Mishnah Berurah said that the whole chiyuv of bedika on tzitzis, why do you have to check it? The Mechaber says the reason you have to check your tzitzis is because of the chashash of a bracha of Atala. We want to make sure that your tzitzis are kosher before you make a bracha. So the Mishnah Berurah said, wait a second. Don't you have to check the tzitzis to make sure that you're not wearing a beged of Dal Kanfus without tzitzis? So on that, the Mishnah Berurah said a lot of shittas hold you could always rely on the chazaka. Why? Because it's a chazaka. If the tzitzis were kosher, it's still kosher. So for that chiyuv, you're not mechuyev to go. You're not mechuyev to go check the tzitzis. It's only for the bracha of Atala that you have to check. So too over here, you're not making the bracha. The shliach tzibur at night is not going to make a bracha because of the Rambam. So it's only a question of, is he putting on the garment and it's not chayiv and tzitzis? He says, so for that, first of all, you already have the shita that holds that you're not mechuyev to check your tzitzis for that. And second of all, over here you're dealing with in a case where, according to the Rambam, there's no chiyuv at all. So the shliach tzibur doesn't have to check his tzitzis. Okay. Now we're up to the, let's see. Yeah. The Ramah said you only make a bracha during the day and only on a beged that's a beged shel yoim. That way you're chayiv both according to the Rambam and the Rosh. Says the Mishnah Berurah katan gimel gam ken layoim pirish gam layoim. It has to be a beged that's meant to be worn also during the day. Fafilu gam miyuchad lalayla. When the Ramah says that you only make a bracha on a beged yoim, he doesn't mean that it has to be a beged that you only wear by day, but you never wear it by night. No, it has to be a beged that you wear by day, even if you also wear it at night. Because according to the Rosh, that's chayiv and tzitzis. The choshke and l'yom levad. Okay, now let's go weiter in the Ramah. So we're 4 lines down, end of the line. The Ramah says a very interesting thing. The Ramah just said that you only make a bracha during the day on a beged shel yom. But at night, we wouldn't make a bracha. Why? Because we're chayshish for the Rambam. The Rambam holds at night there's no chiyuv of tzitzis, no matter what kind of beged it is. So we don't want to risk you making a bracha of HaTorah. Says the Rambam, va'achar tfilas arvis. Let's say you davened Ma'ariv early. So let's say it's Friday night, you made early Shabbos. So you davened Ma'ariv after plag. So you davened Ma'ariv early, but it's not really night yet. Va'achar tfilas arvis, af al pi she'adayin yoim, even if it's still day, ein levarich alav. Very interesting. If you davened the Ma'ariv early, and now for some reason you're putting on a talis, you don't make a bracha. Now you might think, why not? It's still during the day. Doesn't matter. Since you davened the Ma'ariv already, you don't make a bracha. Says the Mishnah Berurah is katan dalet, tfilas arvis. So now the Mishnah Berurah brings up a very interesting case where this could be negeya. For us, this would be negeya on Tisha B'Av. Let's see what the Mishnah Berurah says here. Taoist tzibur. A lot of places had the minig that by mincha on a Taoist tzibur, they wore a Talisman tefillin. Sfardim still have that minig. What's it based on? We're worried that on a Taoist tzibur, you're not going to be mekayim meya brachas. You're not going to make 100 brachas because you're losing all your brachas rishaynos and your brachas achraynos. No shakals on a Taoist tzibur, no bar nefashos. So you might not hit 100 brachas. So one way to add on brachas is put on a talis and put on tefillin. And now you got another 3 brachas by mincha. So there was a minig to wear talis and tefillin by mincha. Now we also know that in a lot of places they daven mincha ma'ariv. They daven mincha right before shkia, and then they daven ma'ariv after shkia. So what happens is if it's a Taoist tzibur, and you put on a talis for mincha, now what do you do by ma'ariv? What do you do with the talis? Says the Mishnah Berurah, and again, this is the get to all of us, even Ashkenazim, on Tisha B'Av, because Tisha B'Av we wear talis and tefillin by mincha. So, ubetanis tzibur kishaloiv shetalis b'mincha yosir es hatalis kishiyagil labaruchu. The Mishnah Berurah says you should remove the talis before Ma'ariv. Don't continue wearing the talis by Ma'ariv. Now, why not? Let's remember, what are we coming off of? We're coming off of the Ramah. The Ramah said that you don't make a bracha on a talis at night. Why not? Because we're chayshish for the Rambam. The Rambam says, night, laila lavs man tzitzis, there's no chiyuv. According to the Rambam, even though the talis is a beged shel yoim, so according to the Rosh, it's chayiv even at night, but according to the Rambam, it's not. So according to the Rambam, you make a bracha on talis. So we don't make a bracha on a talis at night. Coming off of that halacha, the Ramah said, you don't even make a bracha on a talis if you put it on after Ma'ariv, even if it's still day. You still don't make a bracha, because you were already makshiv it to be night. You davened Ma'ariv. Now, says the Mishnah Berurah, Taoist tzibur, you find yourself in an interesting situation. You put on a talis for mincha, and now you're going to daven Ma'ariv. Says the Mishnah Berurah, take the talis off by Baruch Hu. Why? What's the problem? I'm not making a bracha. I made the bracha already by mincha. I'm not making a bracha at night. I'm not going against the Ramah. Why do I have to take the talis off? Yet, says the Mishnah Berurah, you got to take the talis off. I think the reason is, and I think I might have seen this in a tshuva in the Igris once. I think the reason is because we're afraid that if the minig is that on a Taoist tzibur you're still going to be wearing the talis by Ma'ariv, somebody might come to make a bracha by Ma'ariv, right? Because put this in your mind. Let's say we're all used to, on a Taoist tzibur, coming in by Mincha, making a bracha on our talis, wearing our talis, and continuing to wear the talis through Ma'ariv. Now, you're used to doing this your whole life. One Taoist tzibur, you overslept, you took a nap in the afternoon, and now you come running to shul, and you're late. And you come in by Ma'ariv, not by Mincha. And everybody's wearing a talis, right? Yeah, everyone's wearing a talis. Because it's a Taoist tzibur, we wear a talis by Ma'ariv. So you're going to grab your talis, put it on, and make a bracha. But you can't make a bracha. Because according to the Rambam, it's a bracha levatala. Therefore, the halachah is, remove the talis before Ma'ariv. So, Taoist tzibur kishalov shetalis b'mincha yasser satalis kishaygil abaruchu meyachad akshav ein loiv shenatalis elalimits tzitzis. Since the another rationale that the Mishnah Berurah gives is, since we don't wear talis all the time, we only put it on to be mekayim the mitzvah of tzitzis. We don't wear a four-quartered garment. We wear a talis katan, but what he's saying is, it's not our style. Our regular clothing do not have tzitzis on them. So we put on a talis, not to wear it as a regular garment. We put it on for the mitzvah of tzitzis. So says the Mishnah Berurah, if you're going to wear it by Ma'ariv, if you're going to continue wearing it by Ma'ariv, it looks it looks like you're saying that nighttime is Zman Tzitzis. Nevertheless, says the Mishnah Berurah, Hashatz lifnei ha'amud, the chazan who's davening Ma'ariv, im eina holich b'malbush ha'elyon, if he doesn't have a jacket, she'ein covered at tzibur b'kach, it's not covered at tzibur to daven for the amud without at least a jacket, pshita de loyasar talis pei olav, he should continue to wear the talis. Says the Ramah weiter, Ubeleil Yom Kippurim, we know that Yom Kippur by night we wear a talis. Says the Ramah, Ubeleil Yom Kippurim, Yom Kippur by night, when we're going to wear a talis in shul, Yis'atev ba'od yom, we should see to it to put that talis on while it is still day, v'yavarech alav, and we should make the bracha during the day. Don't come to Ma'ariv, Yom Kippur night, don't come late, when it's already nighttime, and make a bracha on the talis. Make sure that you put on the talis before Kol Nidre, while it's still day, and make a bracha. Says Mishnah Berurah Katan Hey, B'leil Yom Kippurim, says the Mishnah Berurah gives us a tangential point. You should know that whoever davens for the Amid has to wear a talis l'kavod hatzibur. Even somebody who says Kaddish Yosam by davening, he should wear a talis for kavod hatzibur. Ve'ein mavarach alav, but you don't have to make a bracha. The Aruch HaShulchan writes that we're not noyig that way, that you have to wear a talis for Kaddish Yosam. Eis katan vav yis'atev Yom Kippur by night. We put on a talis. Why do we wear a talis Yom Kippur by night? Lehidamos lamalachim, so that we should be compared to malachim. Shem utafim levanim. Malachim are wrapped in white. So too, Yom Kippur, we want to be like malachim. So we wrap ourselves in our white talisman. And for that reason, we don't take off the talis until after Ma'ariv Matzah Yom Kippur. We wear it through Ma'ariv Matzah Yom Kippur, because even then we still want to be like malachim. The Ramah said we should make sure Yom Kippur by night to make the bracha on the talis while it's still day. But if you came late and you didn't have a chance to put the talis on until it was already night, shuv lo yavarech, you should no longer make a bracha to shema halacha ka Rambam, because we have to be chayshish for the shitas Rambam. Maybe now there's no chiyuv of tzitzis, and chas v'chalila you would be making a bracha levatala. Umashmim divrei Magen Avram, the Chavetz Chaim says it is implied from the words of the Magen Avram, Sif Katan Dalid, that while it's true that we don't make a bracha at night, but during Tzeis HaKechavim, during the twilight period between Shkia and Tzeis, you could make a bracha. The Taimai in his rationale is Dalai b'tzitzis like siv yoim. Over here by tzitzis, it doesn't. Why is it that Laila is not as man tzitzis? Why is it that night is no chiv of tzitzis? It doesn't say yoim by tzitzis. It doesn't say that tzitzis must be worn during the day. It's not totally in day. It's totally in vision. Or isem oisai. Rak or isem oisai. Mashma, the implication is kol zman shenu chalirois. As long as you could see. And the truth is, during the twilight period, you could still see. V'cheid pasuk bal darach achayim. U'b'sefer Matei Ephraim re'isi shemachmir mazeh. The Matei Ephraim is machmir. Ach im zeh gufa hu mistapik. Im kvar higia ben hashmashas. But says the Chavetz Chaim, if we're not even sure if it's ben hashmashas yet, near the bavada yuchal avarach, then certainly you can still make a bracha. The balavach idasa taisis v'arash. The ksus yoyim chayav b'layla. Because again, we do have the shitas harash. That nighttime is the chiv of tzitzis on a beged shel yom. So making a bracha on a talis wouldn't be a bracha levatala according to the rush. So we have the shitas harush. We also have that it's not Laila. It's not Tzeisa Kechavim yet. And you can still see. So, and now you're adding on top of that we don't even know if it's Tzeisa Kechavim yet. Maybe it's still before Shkia. So we have so many sveikas, you could still make a bracha. V'agra b'biyurav mitzadid came gam l'shitazu. Ayin Sham. I know that we're going a little bit long, but I want to be able to finish the page, so I'm going to press on. Very fascinating sif over here, sif base. Blankets. Blankets are four-cornered, and at night you go to sleep, and you wrap yourself in a blanket. What's the status of tzitzis on a blanket? Now, you'll tell me, but Rabbi Weiss, you just said nighttime. So, nighttime, okay, well, according to the Rambam, it's putter. But how about the Rush? According to the Rush, it's not putter. Well, maybe a blanket is a beged Laila. Is it a beged Laila? Sometimes you take a nap during the day. A lot of people, every Shabbos afternoon, they take a nap. So is it a beged Laila? It's not miyuchad l'Laila. You want to take a nap, you'll use your blanket during the day too. So according to the Rush, it's chayiv and tzitzits. We're machmir. According to the Rush, we don't wear a beged of dalet kanfos during the day, even if it's a beged Laila, a bona fide beged Laila, right? We still put tzitzits on it. So what's the status of a blanket? Then there's, of course, another question. Is a blanket really a beged? Is that considered a beged? So that's the topic of Sif Beis. Let's see the Mechaber. Sadinim, blankets, says the Mechaber. Afal pisha adam yoshem behem baboker. Even if you sleep with a blanket in the morning, and it's not even, even though you sleep with it in the morning. Every night you go to sleep, fine, you'll tell me that the blanket is a beged Laila, because you go to sleep with it at night. But you wake up in the morning, and in the morning you still got the blanket. Says the Mechaber, we do not put tzitzits on blankets. Okay. Says the Mishnah Berurah, ois katan ches. Behem tzitzits, we don't put on tzitzits. Why not? Says the Mishnah Berurah, mipnei she'ikar tashvishan balayla, because the ikar tashvish of a blanket is for the night. Even though it's true that you wake up in the morning with it every morning, but that's only because you slept through the night. Even though it's true that you take a nap, yes, it's true that you take a nap, but a nap is an exception. A nap is not the rule. A blanket, strictly speaking, is made for the night. That's what the Mishnah Berurah is saying now. And therefore it's called ksus laila. Now, the problem with this right away, says the Mishnah Berurah, is, but that's only a p'tur according to the Rush. According to the Rush, if you're saying that the blanket is a beged laila, so then it's putter even during the day, because it's a beged laila. Aval harambam, according to the Rambam, the ksus laila chayiv b'yoyim, that even though it's a ksus laila, during the day it's chayiv, so then chayiv. According to the Rambam, how do you get away with this? According to the Rush, you might want to suggest that the blanket is a ksus laila. Since the blanket is a ksus laila, so during the day it's putter. So now you're on easy street. Why? Because at night, well, according to the Rambam, laila is not as man tzitzits. So you're putter. According to the Rush, a blanket is always a ksus laila. So it's potter at night. But what do you do with the rush during the day? I'm sorry, what do you do with the Rambam during the day? According to the Rambam, even if the blanket is a ksus laila, if you're wearing it during the day, it's chayiv. So what happens if you take a nap during the day, according to the Rambam? Again, if you designate the blanket as a ksus laila, so what happens at night? At night, according to the Rambam, you're in the clear. According to the Rambam, there's no chiv tzitzis. The blanket is a ksus laila. According to the Rush, it never has a chiv of tzitzis, even during the day. So you go to sleep at night with a blanket, so far you're okay. You're potter both according to the Rambam, because there's never a chiv, and according to the Rush, because it's a beged laila. But now, how about if you take a nap during the day with the blanket? According to the Rambam, even if it's a beged laila, it doesn't matter. According to the Rambam, if you wear a beged laila during the day, it's chayiv and tzitzis. So what do you do? And we're makbid. So what do you do? How do you take a nap with a four-cornered blanket during the day? So says the Mishnah Berurah, v'yesh ayrim, therefore there are those that say, oid tam liftar, another reason to exempt a blanket from tzitzis. Mishum d'loi chiva HaTorah, rak derech malbush, oid derech ituf. What does the Torah Dirshu say? The Torah Dirshu says, dilim tasalacha, al arba kantfeis kisusacha. It has to be a garment, asher techaseba, that you clothe yourself with. Now, is a blanket clothing? Says the Mishnah Berurah, loy derech halah ba'alma. But a blanket is just something that you lay on top of yourself. And therefore, maybe a blanket never has a chiv of tzitzis, because it's not truly a garment. So that's another reason to pater a blanket. However, he says, v'yesh cholkin, and he brings this down from Taoist, v'yesh cholkin, the previous svara, was the Mordechai, that derech halah is not a beged, so a blanket would never be chayiv. But now he brings down from Taoist, v'yesh cholkin, there are those that disagree with the Mordechai. With Sfira Lahu, and they hold, ta'afilu im yatzia tachtov beged shal arba kafes chayiv b'tzitzis. The Balei Taoist hold, forget that if you lay it on top of you, it's chayiv, derech halah. Even if you lay on top of the blanket, so you're not covering your body with the blanket at all, the Balei Taoist hold it's chayiv and tzitzis. The choshkein derech halah, certainly if you use it to cover you. So we got a problem over here. We got a problem. We don't seem to have yet a clear ptur on a four-cornered garment. According to the Rush, right, we have one theory is that a blanket is a beged shalayla. But so what? According to the Rush, if you wear a beged shalayla during the day, it's chayiv and tzitzis. How do we get away from that problem? Another theory, it's not considered a malbush. You're wearing a derech halah, it's not a malbush. We're only chayiv on a malbush, and this is not a malbush. Okay, that's the Mordechai. But the Balei Taoist disagree. So what do we do with that? Al Kain, therefore, says the Mishnah Berurah, Hechriya Magen Avram, the Magen Avram rules, Tiyase Karen Achas Agula, that you should round off one corner of the blanket, the Yetze Alibud Kulei Alma, and that way you're covered according to everyone. Achein, however, Mashma Midvarav, it's Mashma for the words of the Magen Avram, the Ein Lahachmer Bazeh, that you should only be Machmir, Rak Besadin Shal Tsemer, with a woolen blanket. Because remember, a woolen blanket is chayiv and tzitzis b'daraisa according to everybody. But according to the Mechaber, if it's made out of sharminim, if it's not semer or pishtim, wool or linen, it doesn't have a chayiv daraisa. So that would be another reason to be mekel. Avaloi b'shal pishtim or sharminim v'ayin atam b'pri megadim. Now, I see we're not going to be able to go further than this, but I do want to read to you the Aruch HaShulchan, because this is very negaya. We all have blankets. So the Aruch HaShulchan says, Kasav Rabbeinu Abeis Yosef B'Sif Beis, Sadinim Afa Pisha Adam Yoshe Behem B'Baiker Ein Matil Behem Tzitzis Ad Kad L'Shaynai, Kalaymar Mishum De Ikrai Hu L'Layla, Umashma De B'Loize HaYechai B'Tzitzis Afa Pisha En Loishay Mesatif Pai Elishu L'Kisei Aguf Be'esh Shinasai. And he goes on and he says, he brings down the problem. Well, Lefizeh Tamu Al Miniga Olam Shein Oise Behem Tzitzis. It's a wonder. Why don't people put tzitzis on blankets? Laha Rambam, the ksus laila b'yom chayiv. V'hem kama pama mechaz gufa b'shidasa b'yom. So in the end, he says that he goes with the sheet of the Mordechai, the HaTorah lo chayva b'tzitzis raksus, that you only have a chiyuv of tzitzis on a garment, shaloivish al gufay, that you wear on your body, oy ma'atoif by gufay, or that you wrap your body in. K'may b'zman Gemara shayu mis'atfid b'sadinim, like in the time of the Gemara, where that's how people dressed. They wrapped themselves in a cloak. Aval sadin she'al mitasai, but the blanket that's on your bed, shemechasa by gufay, that you cover your body with, einoi malbush klal, that is not considered a garment, upater mitzitzitz, and it's pater from tzitzitz. V'chein ikar ledina. The Aruch HaShulchan says that is the psak halachah. So our blankets, we don't put tzitzitz on it. Could be we're following this psak of the Aruch HaShulchan. All right, I'm a little disappointed that we didn't finish the Siman, but it's already quite long, so we're going to stop over here. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. The schos of limud HaTorah should be making against Klal Yisrael. The Rabbi Shalom should send Yeshua Sefuris Parnas and Shidduchim to all those in need, and we should be zeichet to see the Bias Gal Tzedek b'meherav Yameinu Amen. Be well.